Let me begin by reading what Swami writes for today. He asks the question, has something or someone angered or upset you? If so, work on correcting that emotion in yourself. Just think. Someday, perhaps even later this very day, you'll find yourself involved in other concerns. Emotions don't last. Why let yourself stew in that pot? It is you who are being cooked. Don't react until you've restored your own equilibrium. I like that. Why stew in that pot? It is you who are being cooked by that emotion of anger or whatever it might be. It's any very strong emotion that we hold on to it. We find ourselves stewing in that, and whose happiness is ultimately eroded by that? It's our own happiness, of course. We might be projecting that strong emotion towards somebody else, and certainly their happiness might be affected too. But in the long run, it's we who have to carry the results of that more so than the other people. And we have to work out that emotional feeling. Isn't it so that it seems like whenever a strong emotion, and particularly in the one that's mentioned this evening, anger, it seems like when it comes to us, it's almost as if it somehow has taken possession of us. It's like you can almost think of it as a demon in a way. If some foreign demon has jumped on us or gotten inside of us and has taken possession of us. And because sometimes we get angry, and it's as if we don't have any control over it. It's something that just comes upon us in a suddenness of the moment, and it takes over. Well, of course, it's not that it's taken possession of us. It may have, but who is the one who has invited it in? And it's probably us. It's like inviting a thief into your home. You invite the thief in your home, and you invite it to stay, and then you're surprised, of course, when you find that some of your possessions are taken from you. And so here we have the thief being angry. We invite it in, and it steals from us. It steals our peace of mind. It steals our equilibrium. And what do we find when we get angry? What happens is it can ruin our life. It can ruin our relationships with other people. And yet we somehow continue. And this is the worst part. We get angry and we say, oh, get out. We invite them back again the next time. A little time goes by and then we invite them back in. So if we can see that it's the fact that it's really us that's inviting it in, that emotion in, well, then obviously we have the power also to ask that to leave, or perhaps close the door before that thief even comes in. Trouble, some people, there's a certain aspect to a strong emotion, and tonight we're speaking about anger, that if you look closely, you'll see very subtly there's a certain attraction to a strong emotion. It's stimulating. And some people would think, well, my life, if I didn't have these strong emotions, my life would just be blah. There would be nothing dynamic happening in my life. So it's better to have a strong emotion like this than to have nothing at all. Well, I guess you could look at it that way, but is this really the emotion that you want to have? Is this the feeling that you want to have? The problem with inviting emotions such as anger into our lives, or letting them come into our lives, is they begin to become, you could say, our magnetic compass in terms of pointing us in which direction we're going to go in life. And if every moment of our lives we're making decisions and we think, should I do this, should I do that? If you invite anger in, anger is going to be the magnet that's going to draw the needle of your inner guidance toward it. And you can see that if your life is guided by anger, or if you can't see in yourself, look around you. You see people that are guided by any strong emotion. It's going to lead them down a certain direction, and it's usually not going to be a good one. Think of your own life. If you're feeling peaceful, if you're feeling calm, if you're feeling inspired or joyful, even better, the decisions that you make are going to be informed by that feeling that you have. But if you feel angry, if you feel jealousy, if you feel hatred, or these negative type things, those are going to inform your decisions. And where is it going to lead you? Ultimately, you're going to have to pay the price of your actions. You're going to be led into actions and karma that's going to come back to you, because these sorts of things are ultimately they're led by or directed by your egoic self. They're not your higher self that's guiding you in that. I remember though once I was giving a class and we were talking about how to behave in the office and things that happen in a workplace. And one of the persons talked about anger. We were talking about that, and one person says, well, I find myself getting angry, but I have to be angry. I have to get angry at work, because if I don't get angry, other people are going to walk all over me. They're going to take advantage of me. I'm not going to be able to accomplish anything, and other people are going to get ahead and I won't. So I have to be angry. And I thought, wow, that's one. My first thought was, well, maybe you should find another workplace. But that probably wouldn't be the answer in that person's case, because in the next workplace, I suspect with a feeling like that, they're going to draw situations that's going to bring that out again. Well, sometimes, as the story goes, we know of the saint who told the snake not to bite other people, but he then also told him, he says, it's okay to hiss once in a while, but, to protect himself. Well, so it is. It's sometimes situations in life and in the workplace, we have to speak strongly. But the implication here, is that we are in control of whatever it is we're doing. And if the situation demands it, that we speak a little bit sternly about something, then we will do that. But it's something that we control. Whereas when we're speaking about anger, it's an emotional reaction that really is not in our control. It's something it is in our control, but at the moment we've lost that control. I've lost control of myself. I don't know why I did that, but it just took over. And these are the types of emotions that we need to, for our own benefit, not for other people's benefit, you see, but for our benefit. We need to control these things, or else we're going to be living in a hell of our own making. And oftentimes we can think of it, yes, but it makes other people's life miserable if we're an angry sort. But in the end, just as Swamiji is saying in this reading today, we are the ones who are stewing in that pot. And in the end, we are the ones that are going to be cooked. And so for our own sake, for our own happiness, we need to be able to control that. Now, anger is something, it's one of those emotions that is said to have a partner. It doesn't come on its own. And of course we read in the Bhagavad Gita what that partner is. It says, anger and desire, man's two great enemies. And as we hang on to our desires, because they're very strong, they too are things that seem to possess us, and then we possess them. We're in league with them. At the same time as when we have anger or when we have desire, inevitably we're going to have desire, and they take possession of us, and we can't let them go. And the title of today's discourse, we labeled it Letting Go of Anger, as if this is something that we have control of it. And this is really what we need to do, is we need to let it go. It takes possession of us, but really it's us that are holding it very tight. Years ago, at Ananda Village, where I lived, it's in the forest, and so there's wild animals there. And one of the local animals are the raccoons. And you see the pictures of the raccoons. They have little black bands across their eyes. They look like masks, so they're bandits. You look like bandits, and they can be bandits too. The raccoon has a thumb. It has its fingers, but it an opposable thumb, so they can grab things and they can hold things, and they're very, very clever animals. And what they'll do is, of course, if you have a raccoon in your neighborhood, sometimes they'll even come into your house. They'll climb in a window and they'll find something, they're looking for food, of course, and they can become a bit of a nuisance, and they can be little bandits. And so, oftentimes, if you have a raccoon, if we had a raccoon in the neighborhood, we would try to trap the raccoon, and they'd make a metal cage that the raccoon would go into the cage. You'd entice the raccoon in, and then the door would close, and he'd be in the trap. And then next day you'd come, you'd find the raccoon, and you'd take it off somewhere to sort of live somewhere else, long distance away. Well, there was a raccoon in one part of our community which was causing lots of trouble like this, and people got fed up with it. So they got the trap, they set it out, and they put some bait inside the trap. And it was a metal cage. And I think it was peanut butter and something like that on the crackers or something like that, something the raccoon would like. And so they left it there. And so the next day, they came back, and sure enough, the raccoon had trapped himself. But it trapped himself in an unusual way. The raccoon was smart. He wasn't going to go into that cage, but he was able to get his arm through the cage and reach into the cage and grab the bait, the crackers and peanut butter and whatever it was, and it hold it in its fist. But unfortunately, as it had grabbed it, it couldn't get its hand back out of the cage. And it was trying to get the hand out of the cage with the bait in its hand, and it couldn't do it. And all night long, he was trying to get away from that trap. And finally, in the morning, when people came to get him, saw him, he was still outside the cage, but he was still stuck because he would not let go of that trap, of that bait that he had got his hand onto. And I've heard it said that you can catch monkeys this way also, that because they're like raccoons in many ways, mischievous. So he wouldn't let go. And so what they came up and they saw the raccoon, and the raccoon was mad, and he was hissing and growling. So what they did is they got a big box or a big sack, and on the other side they grabbed the cage and lifted the cage with the raccoon hanging on the whole time, not letting go. And they took the whole contraption and they put it in the sack, took the big sack, and they put that in the back of a truck, and they drove him away and off to his new home, wherever that was. Well, you can see, I suspect wherever they got him out of that, disengaged from that trap. But isn't this sort of like it is? We find we have this desire for something, and we hang on to it. And it seemingly it's not going to work. That desire is not being fulfilled. And so we hiss and we growl and we make a commotion, when the simple solution is to simply let ourselves go. Let the desire go, and we are free of it. And of course, we can engage in another one or not, but that's the obvious solution, but we don't. We hang on to it. And so this is our dilemma, is we're stuck in that way. Now, I remember, why do we get frustrated? Why does anger come when our desires are not fulfilled? It's simply a matter that we want life to be other than it is. Circumstances to change, circumstances to be different than what they are. And we want life to conform to what we want and to what our desires are. When I was a boy and going to school, a schoolboy, our school, as most of the schools in the city of Los Angeles where I grew up, had teams of various sports, and I was on the tennis team. I was a very good tennis player. But inevitably, I would lose a match here and there. And looking back on all the matches, I could say that one of the reasons I lost the matches is because my opponent kept hitting the ball where I wasn't. And he would hit it over there, and I could have said, "Why are you hitting the ball over there? Why don't you hit it right to me?" But of course, that wasn't the object of the game, was it? His object was to get it past me. And it was no use for me to complain, "Oh, the ball's over there. You should have hit it to me." No, my job was to go over to where the ball was and hit it back to him, not to complain. And this is how it is with life as a whole. Life hits the ball to us, and sometimes it comes right at us, so we can hit it right back. But most often, it seems, it hits us somewhere else, and then it's not there, and we say, "Oh, I wish it was other than it really is," and we get angry. We respond, and that's a common theme all the time. If you look at every time that you get angry, probably at the root of it is something happened that was not in conformance to what you wanted to have happen. And so consequently, this emotion comes up. It's this response comes up. And again and again and again. And some people, of course, when it becomes habitual, the more you practice it, the more it takes possession of you. It takes possession of our lives. We don't want to live like that. It's because, again, it's not one, it doesn't feel good. One, it causes trouble for everybody else, and eventually it causes trouble for ourselves. And it takes control of our guidance and those things that take us in the direction that we really want to go. And we end up cooking ourselves. We cook our happiness in the pot of anger. Now, there's many, much of the trouble in life and in common life comes from people getting angry this way. And you can go, there's anger management classes, isn't it? So people they go to court and there's been some dispute, and the judge gives them a fine and sends them off to go to attend 6 anger management classes. Now, sometimes this works because there are things you can do. I mean, just learning to be aware of the anger when it comes up. If you can learn to catch it and to observe it when it begins to come, you can, if you have practice, you can catch it, you can stop. You can delay your response. Many people, if something happens and immediately there's no time in between the action and the reaction to it. If you can learn to lengthen that, well, that's one thing that's helpful for you to do, because if you can at least delay it, you still get angry maybe, but at least if you delay it, then the potential is there for you to catch it and be able to moderate it, or be able to redirect your feelings in another direction. And there's many other techniques, and I don't want to go into anger management class, but you can pursue many different things that will help you to moderate this. But really, to just play defense against anger is a good start, but you have to do something more than that. You also have to take the initiative and go into, you might say, the root causes of this. Desire, yes, but also you have to put out a positive emotion, you might say. Not in this, emotion maybe is not the right word, but you have to put out a positive feeling. For example, love as opposed to hate, calmness as opposed to anger. You need to put out that. This reading today is from October 28, and that date reminds me that in America, on the last day of October, there's a holiday. It's a minor holiday, for most people minor. For children, sometimes it's a major holiday because it's called Halloween. And Halloween's the last day of October, and Halloween is a day that children, adults too, adult children, I suppose, they dress up as ghosts and goblins and other characters as well, but typically, traditionally, witches and ghosts and goblins. A little bit on the dark side, has that element to it. And there's many, you might say, the symbolism, all of this is there's many different explanations for this. And one of them is, as well, there's a story that one night out of the year, the departed, are released from purgatory. released from hell to be able to come back on earth, and they come in the form of ghosts and goblins. That's one story. But there's another also that I prefer. And that is that Halloween is actually hollow. It means, it's derived from the words hollow, hallowed, sacred. Een is another way of saying eve. It's the eve of a sacred day. In other words, and the day following it, November 1st, is what's in the Christian Catholic calendar is All Saints Day. So it's the eve, Halloween is the eve of All Saints Day. And All Saints Day is the day that the night before, the goblins and ghosts, and then on the next day, you have All Saints. It's the day to pay homage to all the great saints of all traditions, living and dead and past. And you could say the saints represent the light. And when the light comes, when the light first shines, it creates shadows, of course. But then when the light is fully up, the shadows disappear. And you could also say when light comes, it drives away darkness. And the darkness anticipates the coming of the light. And as it anticipates the coming of the light, it scurries from every hiding place and it runs away. And so in the case of, maybe I'm stretching this a bit, but in the case of our topic this evening, is when you have a negative emotion, you have, whether it's anger, jealousy, hatred, or envy, all of these, the answer to them is yes, you have to manage them sometime. You have a unruly guest in your house, and before you can get rid of them, perhaps you have to manage the situation. But to really get rid of them is not, you don't have to forcibly drive them out. They don't want to be there in the presence of light. So when you shine the light, the darkness by its own volition does not want to be there. And so you'll find this in practical day-to-day situations. You ever notice in sometimes situations people start to gossip and they start to say negative things back and forth, and they try to draw you, perhaps you're in an office and they draw you into the conversation and you're super positive, you're light, you're happy and joyful. They don't want you there. They don't want you there because you're you might say destroying the party that they're having. They don't like the darkness, doesn't like the light. And so with that thought in mind, invite the light in. And try to beat the darkness with a stick, as Swamiji said. He says, just bring the light in and you'll find that it begins to, it doesn't want to be there anymore. And whenever you feel that, perhaps you get to that first stage, is where you learn to be able to delay that reactive tendency and be able to observe it a little bit. If you can do that, then you have the opportunity to invite light into your life. Invite love, compassion, empathy, cheerfulness. If necessary, just say, stop. I know the road I'm heading. I don't want to go there. I want to go toward the light. And you'll find that as you do that naturally, it'll become a habit. Just like inviting the darkness in is also a habit. Inviting anger, becoming angry. These are simply repeated activities that have become ingrained. And we can change those. This ability to respond, to choose our response to a situation, is the mark of what it means to be a real conscious human being. An animal merely reacts, like that raccoon. It had very little control over its ability to make a choice. But when we reach the level of being a human, we are supposed to have some control. And that control comes from learning to be conscious. And of course, we want to be more than just conscious. We want to be super conscious. We want to invite higher realities into our life, but it begins by learning to make a choice in life. And so we learn through trial and error. We learn to, in the little ways, whenever we feel love, we feel kindness, is to cultivate them and then to bring that light into any situation. And you'll find that little by little, you begin to make that a habit. And this is the mark of what it means to make spiritual progress. Whenever we give one of our level 1 how to meditate classes, beginning classes, there's always this question that comes in people's mind. Am I making spiritual progress? And at that point, they might recount some psychic experience they had, some vision they had, something happened here in the spiritual eye, and they'll tell you about that. And of course, as the acharya or teacher of the class, I'm going to listen very patiently and nicely, because these are interesting things and encouraging. They can be encouraging things. But if they ask the question, does that indicate I'm making spiritual progress? I have to say, not necessarily. It may have nothing to do with it. Does it make you angry? Does it make you jealous? And if it does, what's going to happen? I mean, how do you react to those things? Do you feel a sense of forgiveness of other people when they trespass against you? All of these are the mark of somebody who's has been able to make some spiritual progress in their life. And we don't love others for what it does for them. We feel compassion for others. We feel forgiveness of others. Forgive other people. I'm not going to forgive that person because they don't deserve it. Well, it's true. They may not deserve it. But how about you? You see, in the act of forgiving and the act of consideration, it's we who are the beneficiary. And if we don't, it's we who will, in the long run, will suffer. Just as Swami says, if we're angry in the morning, later on during the day, it's going to pass. And that incident is gone, and it passes. And every emotion is temporary. But if we hang on to it, it's not so temporary. And the consequences are not so temporary. So don't be like that raccoon. Let's not be like that. Or the monkey, with grabbing the coconut. Let's be conscious. Let's be wise. Let's look at the results of our past action, and let's live in that higher way, and we'll find that we are the beneficiaries. We're the ones that are going to feel the benefits of all of this. And remember where we started with this title: Let Go of Anger. That tension, that emotional tension that grabs it. Let it go. It just probably, whatever caused it, probably wasn't that big of a deal. And it doesn't mean that you let other people and life circumstances walk over you. No, be conscious, choose, but don't let it be from the emotional side, from that negative emotional side. If you have to choose to do something, speak strongly, do it if it's the appropriate thing to do. But let it be considered, and not, if you feel that tension and that welling up of that entity, you might say, that goblin taking possession of you, and you will, from your own experience, say, stop, no, I'm not going to go that way. And, you could say, like they say, count 10 if necessary, delay it, and then come back to it. And in time, you'll find, little by little, you'll become the master of yourself. And this is what it means to make real spiritual progress, not to react to these little things in life, but instead to choose the higher path. Choose the light. Choose the light.